Hello? Can you hear me? Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. That's more like it. It's quite an honor to be here. Mr. Jalo Waziri, the organizers, AMEDA, quite grateful for the opportunity to join these discussions on an industry that is very important. As we have heard from all the different speakers today, the central role that financial market infrastructure plays in being a catalyst for economic transformation. I mean, if you look at any economy that has gone through any of its transformative stage, you'll find that the capital market is an instrument, is a platform for such transformative change to occur. And as we talk about technology as well, it is an industry that acutely feels the impact of advancements in technology. When we say value creation, I think the financial markets, feels that the people that feel that impact a lot because advances in technology means efficiency, it means more transactions, it means more automation. So being at the cutting edge, if you play in the financial markets industry, it's a critical success, a critical factor to success. So we've talked about what I'm going to talk about today is really not financial market infrastructure just being a platform for economic transformation, but being actually a frontline solution that we can use to drive economic transformation by being able to leverage the attributes of financial market infrastructure to attract capital into our economy that can help us build our industrial base. I'm coming from an industry and trade standpoint that would then help us to trade competitively. We're in an environment where the savings level for Nigeria is pretty low. So FDI and FPI is very important in us being able to mobilize the level of investment that we need to drive any transformative change that we hope to achieve in our economy. So when I think about financial market infrastructure, I really think about it in terms of it being the invincible hand that guides the invisible hand. We all know the famous quote from Adam Smith around how the invisible hand really drives people who are acting out of self-interest towards creating a greater good. And the financial market itself provides that platform for that self-interest to coalesce into creating a utilitarian environment that creates the greatest good for the most people. And so in the modern market, the financial market has become the invisible hand. And I see the financial market infrastructure as the invisible hand that guides the invincible hand, because it's the tool that enables all the transformations, all the value creation, the local capital formations that happen in our economy to be possible. And I think the conversation around that we're having today, it's very relevant, particularly for Nigeria and for the broader African economy, because we're at a critical juncture where a lot of forces are beginning to reshape the frameworks and the protocols that have guided financial and capital flows for the last decades. And these systems have been what have really underpinned the global value creation that we've witnessed and the remarkable increase in living standards that globally we've seen. more countries much more than others. So in this context, having a robust market and the enabling infrastructure is very essential for helping us navigate through the shifts and unlocking sustainable economic growth. So we've talked about why financial markets matter, and I wouldn't dwell too much on this because a lot of people have already covered this ground. It's one of the biggest things that financial markets do, and of which the infrastructure aspect of it enables it, is the allocation of capital to the most productive areas of the economy. That capital allocation mechanism is possible because price discovery is not a binding constraint. In an environment where that is a constraint, then that capital allocation, the decision on capital allocation is done with information that is not clear and without a lot of clarity. And with that also comes the ability to be able to enable confidence. When you have easy price discovery, it enables confidence and flexibility in making investment decisions. They also serve as a tool for crisis management for the regulators, the central banks, to be able to intervene, particularly as we've seen, the dark side of financial markets is boom and bust cycles. And in my lifetime, I've experienced quite a few. And so the information that having a robust financial market infrastructure provides enables regulators to intervene and be able to mitigate risk. So for us, a robust financial market infrastructure should be able to inspire confidence in the integrity and resilience of the system, provide the network and the platforms that will allow people to not only to be inclusive, but transactions to happen very rapidly. We talked about being able to create apps and other mechanisms that allow more people to invest into that come into the capital markets. And also, markets need structure. A robust financial market and its enabling infrastructure should have standards and governance and transparency, particularly as we increasingly get into an environment where integration, we're truly living in a global village with EU and with AFCFTA, with regions increasingly integrating their markets. Having that structure and transparency and governance is very key. Mr. Mokede had talked about some of the growth that we've seen within the financial markets infrastructure in his speech earlier on today, and we are experiencing tremendous growth in this sector. Since by 2023, we've seen the industry growing at 8% annually, reaching 278 billion as of 2023. Shareholder returns from FMIs were 70% higher than the broader financial sector. Funding to the industry has reached 2.9 billion, which was up from 1.3 billion just 4 years ago. And this is not just in the global context. We've also seen this progress being manifested in our local environment, with Nigeria producing a majority of the so-called fintech unicorns. And what is driving all this change, this growth? Shorter settlement cycles. We're seeing almost instantaneous settlements and a shift towards, T+1 or T+0 settlements. We're having tokenization and blockchain technologies, bridging the gap between traditional and digital finance, which is very key as we seek to bring more people into the financial markets. And with all the growth in data, we're having strong demand for financial data as our ability to analyze and make decisions improve, aided by technology. And this particular area is projected to reach 70 billion by 2030. There's also increasing momentum towards cross-border connectivity, mainly in emerging markets, given that we're still lacking from a regional connectivity standpoint. And in the panel conversation earlier, there was discussions around the challenges, the constraints around KYC, around payments across within the West Africa space, within the African space. I mean, this is an area that needs a lot of work, but it's an area where work is being done, led by AfroExim, in developing a Pan-African payment, and also the MANSA system, which is a regional KYC system that will help improve identification and reduce transaction costs, which also contributes to easy price discovery. Also, we're seeing fintechs reshaping the FMI space. Between 2018 and 2022, funding more than doubled from 1.3 billion to 2.9 billion, which I mentioned earlier, which is a phenomenon that I've also was experienced here with the Flutter Waves and the Chippers and all the payment systems that have risen over the years in Nigeria and have increased levels of financial inclusion because of the ease of which people who were previously out of the economic mainstream can be brought into the fold. About AI, like I mentioned, this is an industry that acutely experiences the impact of advances in technology. If people who were of the 1980s vintage can remember the era of stockbrokers, where if you needed to do any transaction, you had to go through a stockbroker. But today, with companies like Bamboo, with other companies as well, and in the abroad, companies like Vanguard and the rest of them will allow you to do all sorts of transactions just from your cell phone. And that is only the beginning. AI continuously, it's advancing what is possible from a transaction standpoint, empowering real-time trading and risk management as well for regulators. So in bringing it closer to home, we talked about how we've talked about how Africa, well, the MENA world, and Africa in particular, is the next frontier. You just have to look at the attractive demographics that we have to understand the potential for Africa as a huge market. Nigeria in particular is estimated that in the next 30 years will be the third most populous country in the world, and a country that is also a population that is largely youthful. And for sub-Saharan African area, the median age is only 18.1 years, and for MENA it's 25.9. And the youth are demanding, they are tech savvy, they are demanding connectivity, and they need to be included and have access to investable products. And this is really important because if you look at in the Nigerian space, with what happened recently with CBEX, and as well as with pyramid schemes like MMM and the rest of them, there's a desire, there's an appetite to invest in a structured market. But unfortunately, we're having situations where illegal platforms are taking advantage of this appetite. So, and when we look into our crystal ball and see what the future is going to look like, you can see that the future of financial market is here in Africa, but we need the infrastructure to be able to manifest this potential and be able to bring all these people into the financial market. And technology and financial market infrastructure goes a long way in making that, increasing access and also making participation a lot easy. So let's take a look at the local context. The president came out and put out an agenda, the Renew Hope agenda, which is to drive a $1 trillion economy by 2033. This will require 8.3% average annual GDP growth. And if you look at what our growth rate has been, you see there's probably about a delta of 5%. So to get there, we require massive amounts of investments. On the onset, we need at least $10 billion a year just to get started, just to reach a critical point, to even begin to then drive that multiplier effect to get us to that 1 trillion. And so we must unlock capital at a scale, at a large scale, and deploy it efficiently into the real economy, whether it's housing, manufacturing, or any other, or banking. And for this to happen, we need our financial markets to be working effectively, which is underpinned by a modern and robust financial market infrastructure. But getting there requires a lot more than policy declarations and vision. It has to run through a modern market. It has to run through digital connectivity to be able to bring more people in, interoperability, as was mentioned earlier, and inclusive. And this will include everything from some of the challenges that we're having right now, digital identification, credit bureaus, clearing houses, to work in concert and work effectively. As I mentioned before, there are external imperatives that are shaping the financial markets that will influence the future of the financial market as well as the infrastructure that sustain it. Currently, we must contend with energy transition and the capital flows that it demands in creating products that allow us to channel investments into clean energy. In fact, with AI and advances in technology, the energy requirements of just maintaining the data and infrastructure required even makes the energy requirements more acute, particularly in a situation where we are looking to transition to clean forms of energy. We don't only have to navigate that transition, but also ensure that we have adequate energy to power all the data that is required to maintain a robust market where transactions, the volume has increased and transactions are happening in real time. And we have shifting geopolitical considerations. We are in an environment right now where the rule-based trade system is under assault. We saw the initial instances of this during COVID as countries began to revert back to protectionism. And with the new American administration and the trade wars, and there's a threat to the rule-based multilateral trade system. It's unclear what this is going to engender within the global marketplace. But one thing is clear is that having a robust domestic market is key for Africa, whichever way these issues go, and also having increased connectivity within our local region is very important as we go through this phase of geopolitical contestations that is changing the landscape in which we have operated over the last 50 years. So to address this, this means that we need to modernize our infrastructure, as mentioned earlier, upgrading our financial systems, so to ensure speed, but also security, with because as we rise in being able to utilize technology, the negatives of improper access and cybersecurity issues have to be addressed, and also positioning our market for global competitiveness to make it easy for people to come into our markets and also to exit. So to make that movement, transfer and movement of capital easy. We have to deepen our market to ensure there's broad participation. The downside of, if I'll say, the financial markets and the FMIs is that while it has created a lot of wealth for a lot of people and has been a major source of good, and like I mentioned, wealth creation and a driver of the increase in living standards that we've experienced, it also has created a very stratified economy. And a lot of people have been left out of all the value creation that have happened over the years. So it's very important that we broaden our participation and that we channel capital to high impact areas, but also that we give opportunities and create tools that allow many people to come into the market. So what must we build? Stronger regulation and smarter risk management, so that while things that happen rapidly, we're able to mitigate exposures to the downside. The ability to mobilize our domestic capital is key, but because there are a lot of capital that's sitting on the sidelines, but for lack of trust and lack of credibility, they are not coming into the mainstream economy. Infrastructure that balances innovation with stability, and then systems that support as we transition into green finance, tokenized assets, and digital payments, making sure we have a system that is able to support that in a very robust manner. What is good is that we're making progress in that regard, as we've seen with payment systems in Nigeria, and the government has interventions that is helping to speed that up as well with the broadband trunk infrastructure and 96,000 kilometer broadband infrastructure investment that the government is doing through the Ministry of Digital Economy. We've also seen strong actions from the Nigerian government in other areas. Recently, there was a bank recapitalization directive that helps to increase the capital base of banks as well as bolster the resiliency of the Nigerian system. We've gone through a forex regulatory reform that has stabilized the naira and have unified all the different exchange rates within a de minimis margin. We've also, the Nigeria is a champion for establishing the digital trade protocols under AFCFTA, led by the Minister of Trade and Investment, Dr. Jumoke, and a focus on increasing digital public infrastructure, as I mentioned, with a 96,000 kilometer fiber optic trunk infrastructure. There's a plan to provide trunk infrastructure for broadband access across the country and thereby reduce costs of connectivity by also reducing right of way for people who need to make investments in the underlying infrastructure that supports financial markets. And also with NIN and the work that NIMSI is doing in being able to develop ID systems that inspires trust and helps identification as well as credit reporting. So what is the vision for the future? There's a role for everybody. There's a role for government to play and a role for investors and DFIs and FMIs. And in this environment, it has to be a public-private collaboration. And an example that I will follow upon is the recent real estate infrastructure fund, which is currently a 250 billion naira fund that is public sector enabled, but largely private sector driven. The initial fund was established led by the Ministry of Finance Incorporated, which is a state-owned enterprise with an initial 100 billion naira seed. But the second 150 billion naira was all private sector driven and was fully subscribed. So we need to see this more of public-private sector collaboration in de-risking products and the marketplace, and also finding ways to, not only through regulation, but sometimes through direct investment and interventions in de-risking the sector and allowing more people to come into it. So I think we'll just close here. So infrastructure is not just hard infrastructure, which is important, but we need to build a financial market infrastructure that is inclusive, is resilient, and is designed for growth. But more importantly, not just for the market, like I mentioned, making sure that this growth is equitable and we're bringing more of our people into it to share as part of that, as that value is created, so that people are not left out and we're creating a world of two halves. So thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity again.
Thank you very much, sir. Your wealth of knowledge is appreciated. I apologize for my insistence on timing.